Before we begin, picture this. You're the last human prisoner in a galaxy that thinks your species is extinct. They tortured you, isolated you, tried to shatter every memory you had, until something impossible broke in. If you're ready for the ultimate sci-fi escape tale, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you never miss the moment humanity strikes back. Let's dive in. The cell was a cube of lightless metal, cold as dead stars and just wide enough for a man to lie flat and think about everything he'd lost. For 11 cycles, Dane Voss had done exactly that. He had stopped counting the days after 200. Time didn't matter anymore. Not here. Not on this asteroid the Drogar Dominion called Facility 97, where screams were silenced by vacuum and hope froze in recycled air. But Voss wasn't broken. His body was. Ribs cracked. Right knee fused stiff. Neural bruising from the cranial probes left him vomiting blood more mornings than not. But his mind, that cage remained locked from the inside. The guards didn't understand it. Reptilian freaks with too many eyes and not enough soul. They tried everything. Electromagnetic torture grids. Chemical interrogations. Virtual simulations designed to replicate pain and loss and madness. But Dane had known worse. He'd watched the last of his platoon get glassed from orbit while he screamed at command to pull them out. He'd surrendered only to buy time for the survivors to scatter, just long enough for their bonded predators to go dark and vanish. That was what they wanted. "Where is it?" they asked every week, salivating behind their voice modulators. "Where is the apex? Where is your bonded beast?" He gave them the same answer every time. "He died. Just like you will." Then they'd strap him down and slice open another piece of him that hadn't healed right. They never believed him. The Dominion thought humans were myths. But they feared the apex. Those creatures made from Earth's deepest nightmares, grown in the gene vaults of dying jungles, designed to kill anything that walked on more than two legs. The bond was the worst part for them. They couldn't understand it. Not even the scientists could untangle why the apex only answered to one. One human. One mind. One heart. Voss remembered the moment Riven chose him. A snarl of fur and armor and fangs, eyes like blue suns, stepping from the pod like a god of instinct. 16 years they fought side by side. Riven killed anything Dane pointed at. But he never needed words. They felt each other in the blood. But that was over. Or so he told himself. Some nights Voss talked into the walls. Not for the guards. Not for himself. But for the sliver of madness he'd allowed to remain. "I know you're dead," he whispered into the black, the crackle of the air filter pulsing above like a tired heartbeat. "But if you're not, damn it, Riven. If you're still out there." He stopped himself. Always at that line. There were no answers. No howls in the void. Just the humming silence of cold confinement and the dry taste of regret. The sound of boots pulled him from his thoughts. Not the usual slither of Drogar feet. This was metal. Purposeful. The light strip above flickered once, then bloomed to red. Emergency protocol. Dane stood slowly, one hand on the wall. Every joint screamed. His vision swam. But he was alert. A voice crackled in overhead speakers, guttural and urgent. Not in galactic common. Drogar tongue. Containment breach. Eastern wing offline. Asset incoming. His heart stopped. Not figuratively. Not poetically. It halted like a seized engine and kicked again with a jolt of something primal. No. It wasn't possible. He pressed his ear to the bulkhead. The distant thump of impacts echoed up the corridor. Sure. What? Like meat on steel. A scream, cut off fast. Another alert blared. Lockdown. Shutters closed over his door. The ceiling lights dropped to emergency pulse. Then came the silence. He knew that silence. He'd heard it on shattered worlds, on nights when nothing moved because the predator had already chosen. Outside, a shadow slid past the viewing slit. Slow. Deliberate. A high-pitched whine followed. The door hissed open, not because the control panel obeyed but because the locking bolts had been cut. Heat shimmered off molten grooves. Smoke drifted inward. Then he saw it. The silhouette. 10 feet tall at the shoulder. Claws glinting like obsidian. Breathing like a forge. Eyes, deep blue, not blinking, not scanning, watching him. Voss didn't speak. Couldn't. The figure stepped in. It moved like a ghost, like gravity had forgotten to apply. Fur bristled with embedded armor, half burnt, half bloodied. One fang was broken. The left forelimb limped slightly, claw tips scoring the floor with every step. The creature stood still. Then it spoke. One word. Dane. His legs buckled. Not from fear. From memory. The voice was older. Rougher. but it was his. Riven? The beast nodded once. I called, Voss whispered. Didn't I? You did. And you heard? I always do. For a moment the silence was sacred. Then alarms screamed again. Behind Riven shadows gathered, soldiers, drones, mechs. Voss stepped forward, pain forgotten. He looked up at the creature he thought he'd lost to war and time. Riven leaned down, jaws inches from his face. You ready? Voss grinned. Been ready 11 cycles. Riven turned. Muscles tensed. And then they moved. Together. The moment they escaped the cell, the facility tried to kill them. Metal shutters slammed down behind them. Wall turrets sprang to life, sweeping red beams across the corridor. Riven moved before they could fire, his body a blur of rage and muscle. He leapt sideways, dragging Voss with one clawed arm, slamming him against the wall just as a plasma bolt sizzled past. The blast caught the edge of his armored hide and flared, leaving a smoking welt. Riven didn't flinch. Dane gasped. You're hit. Riven's eyes remained locked on the corridor. Irrelevant. 2 more bolts hissed past. Riven surged forward with terrifying speed, bounding up the wall and across the ceiling in 3 quick strides. The turrets tried to track, but the apex predator was faster. He hit them like a meteor. Claws pierced steel, tore through circuit boards, ripped the mounts from the wall. Sparks rained down as the hallway dimmed again. Voss staggered forward, still limping, still numb. More coming, Riven growled, lifting his head to scent the air. Heavy footfalls. Dominion brutes. Can we go up a level? There is no up. We're in the core. 9 layers down. Then we fight our way out. Riven's tail swayed slowly. We kill everything in our path. Voss nodded. Like old times. They moved. The next hallway was wide, suspiciously so. Riven halted at the edge, peering into the gloom. Dane knew the Dominion's tactics. Kill zone. Correct. They'll funnel us in, then hit us with concussive grav rounds and neurogas. I'll go first. No, Dane's voice was sharp. You're not my shield. Not anymore. You're not my alpha. Not anymore. They stared at each other, a silent recognition of the long years apart. Dane nodded once. Together. They stepped into the corridor side by side. Nothing happened at first. The silence grew loud. Then vents hissed open and a low whine began to build, like turbines spinning up. Riven's claws flexed. Dane dropped to one knee, grabbing a discarded guard rifle from the floor, checking the charge. And then the wall exploded. A Dominion brute the size of a tank burst through, armored in reactive plating, carrying a gravity flail the size of a tree trunk. Riven didn't hesitate. He slammed into the monster mid-charge, driving it back. The 2 titans crashed against the far wall, metal buckling beneath them. Dane raised the rifle and fired, sending streaks of plasma into the brute's exposed flank. The creature roared, twisted, and swung the flail. It caught Riven in the ribs and sent him skidding backward across the floor, tearing gouges in the alloy. Dane ran straight toward it. He leapt. Fired point blank into its exposed eye slit. The brute shrieked and reeled, staggering. Riven pounced again, fangs sinking deep into the creature's throat, jaws grinding through armor and sinew. Blood sprayed the walls. When it fell, twitching, Riven stood over it, chest heaving. You're slower, Dane said, gasping. You're older. They both laughed. It was brief and sharp and full of things they didn't say. The facility began to tremble. Reinforcements, Riven murmured. I smell 7. No, 9. Coming fast. Any routes? There's a security duct 20 meters west. But the passage is small. I'll squeeze. No. You'll die. Won't be the first time. You go. I hold. Like hell. You are injured. You cannot outrun them. Dane stepped closer, face inches from the beast. You break me out after 11 cycles, you don't get to throw yourself away now. Riven growled low. His breath was hot, metallic. Then run behind me. The duct hatch was sealed. Riven ripped it open with one swipe, flinging the panel aside. Dane scrambled in first, pulling himself through the tight, circular tunnel. Behind him, the sounds of boots and snarls grew louder. Riven turned and hissed, deep and guttural, loud enough to rattle the pipes. Gunfire erupted. Bolts slammed into the duct walls. Dane screamed, "Move!" Riven leapt inside, claws sparking on the edge. The duct groaned under his weight, barely wide enough to contain him. For 5 long seconds they crawled in silence, then the world behind them exploded in heat. A drone had launched a seeker. The duct collapsed behind them as they dropped into a narrow sublevel maintenance chamber, rolling out in a tangle of limbs and scorched metal. Riven's side was bleeding. Dane looked down. That's deep. Not fatal. Dane tore off a strip of cloth from his prison tunic and wrapped it tight around the wound. You shouldn't be here, Dane said quietly. I told them you were dead. I was. What brought you back? You did. The room was still. The lights flickered above. Dane leaned against the wall, breathing hard. They tortured me, you know. I know. I never broke. I know. I told them you died saving me. I did. Dane looked at him, something in his chest cracking open. And now? Now I kill until we're free. In the silence that followed, the facility's klaxons changed tone. The artificial voice returned. Warning. Apex class threat detected in central substructure. Deploy Containment Protocol 7. All forces converge. Riven's fur lifted slightly. His teeth gleamed. They've named me. Dane smirked. You always wanted attention. They're sending everything now. How many? All of them. Dane stood, gripping the plasma rifle tighter. Then we give them something to remember. Riven raised his head and howled. The sound was deep and resonant, echoing through the broken ducts and shattered halls. It was the sound of war reborn. The sound of a bond unbroken. The sound of humanity's nightmare let loose. From deep in the compound, something answered. A shriek of metal. A surge of magnetic energy. Then the lights failed completely. And the hunt began. Smoke rolled through the ruined hallway like fog on a dead planet. Vents hissed. Ceiling panels dangled. The walls pulsed with red warning lights that flickered like dying stars. Riven's shadow moved ahead, broad and predatory, brushing against the walls as he tracked through the dark with silent confidence. Dane followed close behind, rifle raised, sweat soaking the remnants of his prison tunic. They weren't alone anymore. He could hear them, boots moving in coordination, the rhythmic hum of Dominion combat drones, the occasional hiss of clawed limbs against steel. The full weight of the facility's arsenal had been unleashed, and it was converging. Riven stopped at a junction, nose twitching. 2 squats, he said. Front or behind? Both. 15 seconds. Options. Kill them before they trap us. Dane wiped blood from his lip, steadied his grip. Classic. The first wave came from the left, 6 troopers in mirrored armor, their plasma rifles already firing as they rounded the corner. Riven launched himself into the air, a blur of muscle and fury. He landed among them with a sound like bones shattering under an avalanche. Dane didn't look away. He pivoted to cover the right, where another group emerged in formation, calling coordinates in clipped, alien tones. He dropped to one knee and opened fire, sweeping in calculated bursts. One went down with a hole in its throat. Another dropped screaming as his shot burst a fuel cell on its hip. Behind him, Riven snarled. A head bounced past Dane's boots, followed by the clatter of a rifle skidding uselessly across the floor. A blast wave hit them both, concussive shock from an anti-personnel mine lobbed around the corner. Dane's ears rang. He staggered, vision spinning. Riven shielded him from the worst of it, crouching low, steam rising from his back where shrapnel had buried itself in his flesh. Dane forced himself upright. You good? He called out. Riven didn't answer with words. He lunged at the last surviving soldier, seized it by the throat, and slammed it into the ceiling hard enough to dent the frame. The corridor fell silent. Bodies twitched. Smoke thickened. Dane leaned against the wall, coughing. This was supposed to be a prison, not a war zone. It was never just a prison. You were a symbol. Of what? Resistance. Proof they couldn't erase you. Riven stepped past him, not limping anymore. His wounds bled, but he didn't seem to notice. The predator in him had taken over. The cold, methodical killer who didn't stop until there was nothing left to chase. They'll keep coming, Dane said. They already are. The lights shifted again. Overhead, the emergency klaxon changed pitch. A synthesized voice, deeper than before, filled the halls. Primary threat classified as Apex Level 7. Activating Protocol Helix. Genetic suppressants deployed in Sector Delta. Close all blast doors. Riven froze. His body shuddered once. Dane looked up, alarm rising. What is that? Gas, Riven growled. They engineered it for my kind. It slows neural relay, dulls instinct, fractures spatial awareness. You'll be blind. I'll be worse. Where are they deploying it? Everywhere ahead of us. Dane cursed. Backtrack. They're behind us too. No safe route. We make one. He ran toward the nearest control panel and ripped the panel loose. Wires sparked beneath, glowing faintly. He hadn't touched Dominion tech in years, but muscle memory kicked in. He bypassed the language prompt, sliced the main comm relay and opened the security grid. This wing controls internal transport lifts. We don't need lifts, Riven said. No, but they're connected to the thermal venting system. If I override the gate valves, we can flush the suppressant air with heat pressure. Blow it out the ducts. Do it. Dane worked fast. His fingers flew. Sparks danced. Code lines rolled across the screen in 3 different languages, none of them human. He overrode safeties, then triggered the purge. A low rumble shook the walls. The floor vibrated under their feet. The gas system ignited mid-cycle. A roaring tunnel of fire burst through the lower ducts and howled up the shaft like a beast unleashed. Heat scorched their faces even from this distance. Metal groaned. The sirens failed. Dane stepped back, wiping soot from his cheek. Hope they like that. 3 squads burned, Riven said. More to come. Do we have a path? To the hangars. Barely. Then let's finish this. They moved with new urgency. Every step brought them closer to the surface levels, closer to light, air, maybe even stars. But the Dominion wasn't giving up the prize without a final act of savagery. When they reached the launch bay, they found it locked down, shielded behind a kinetic barrier that shimmered with rotating energy pulses. 10 soldiers stood on the other side, waiting. Among them, a massive figure stepped forward, taller than any Dane had seen yet. Not Drogar. Something older. Its voice rasped through the comms. You're Dane Voss, the Apex Master. The last whisper of Terran arrogance. Dane raised his rifle. And you're the sorry bastard who drew short straw. The figure grinned. A helmet hissed open to reveal a pale, eyeless face with branching scars that pulsed with embedded circuits. I am Crawl, the first warden. I was grown to guard this place. I was grown for you. Dane felt Riven tense beside him. The air grew colder. Fused genetics, Riven muttered. A hybrid. They made a half-predator. Crawl unslung his weapon. It was not a gun. It was a spear of living metal that writhed in his grip, as if eager to be used. I will break your bond, he said, and wear the beast's skull on my armor. Riven stepped forward. Try. The barrier dropped. Everything exploded into motion. Crawl leapt like a machine possessed, spear whistling through the air. Riven met him mid-charge, their impact detonating with a sound like thunder inside a bottle. Sparks flew. Dane fired at the flanking troops, ducking between crates and engine shells, dropping enemies one by one. Riven roared, jaws clashing with Crawl's spear as it curved around to strike his flank. The weapon bit deep, spraying blood. But Riven spun and struck with a claw, raking through armor and tearing free a circuit-smeared chunk of Crawl's chest. Crawl didn't scream. He laughed. You fight like a relic, he said. I was made to outmatch you. Riven tackled him through a wall. Metal buckled. Pipes burst. The 2 predators vanished into steam. Dane ducked behind a console, reloaded, and checked the hangar controls. The ships were still locked. He found the override. Shot the control panel. Sparks burst. Engines flared to life. One ship, a Dominion scout craft, sleek and fast, dropped onto the active pad. Through the fog, Riven emerged, dragging Crawl's limp body behind him. His chest was torn open. His breathing was ragged. But his eyes still glowed. Dane ran to him. Can you move? Yes. He looked at Crawl's body. The skull was caved in. Sparks dripped from its spine. He said he was made for me, Riven whispered. And you unmade him. Dane helped him onto the ramp. Inside the cockpit, systems flashed red. He slammed the ignition, overrode the transponder, and braced as the ship lurched into ascent. Below them the hangar burned. As the ship pierced the cloud layer and the black of space greeted them, Dane finally allowed himself to breathe. Riven sank to the floor. We're not safe. No, Dane said, staring into the stars. But we're free. Riven raised his head. For now. Dane nodded slowly. Then we make the next move count. The stars spun silently around them as the ship vanished into the dark. The stars outside the viewport burned like cold diamonds, and in the flickering glow of warning lights, Dane Voss saw his own reflection, older, hollow-eyed, smeared in blood that wasn't his. He gripped the flight stick of the stolen Dominion scout ship with a steady hand, but his thoughts drifted behind him, to the figure curled on the deck like a dying storm. Riven hadn't spoken since they'd escaped the hangar. He breathed in labored bursts, one arm trembling, thick fur soaked red and black. The fight with Kral had taken more than blood. It had taken something from his center, from the part of him that had once believed he was indestructible. Dane rose from the pilot's chair and knelt beside him. The ship coasted silently on auto course through uncharted space. For now no one chased them. But that would change. Riven's eyes blinked open slowly. We're still alive. Barely. A faint smile flickered across his jagged jawline. Then I'm underachieving. Dane tore open a med pack and applied the last vial of coagulant to the wound that streaked across Riven's ribs. The gash hissed and steamed as it closed inch by inch. Riven didn't grunt. He just stared past Dane at the stars, eyes glassy. I killed the hybrid, he said. I saw. But I felt it. What? He wasn't the first. Dane froze. Explain. They're breeding them. Clones. Variants. Some with no master. No bond. Just rage and obedience. The silence stretched. Dane stood and paced the narrow space between the cockpit and the auxiliary panel. His mind raced. If the Dominion had figured out how to replicate the apex bond without a human, they didn't just have a weapon. They had a monster without a leash. How many? I don't know. But he was a prototype. That I'm sure of. Dane slammed a fist into the bulkhead. Sparks jumped. The ship groaned. We should have destroyed the whole facility, he muttered. You couldn't even walk until 2 hours ago, Riven said with a dry chuckle. You did enough. Not if they're building more. He stared into the void, jaw tight. The Dominion wasn't done. They'd never been after just him. They wanted the formula. The bond. The power of control without the loyalty. Without the trust. He turned back to Riven. Can you fly? Riven sat up slowly. His side twitched, but his eyes were clear. Not well. Can you fight? I don't need to be well to kill. Then we're not done. He returned to the controls. The nav map was blank. The Dominion had wiped this ship's logs before it ever launched. But he didn't need coordinates. He had instinct. He had anger. And for the first time in years he had purpose. He punched in a blind jump. Riven raised an eyebrow. That's a one-way trip. Wouldn't be the first. You have a plan? Yeah. Let's take something from them this time. The engines surged. Space twisted. The stars folded in on themselves as the ship tore through the dark into a jump corridor. No destination, no allies, just a direction, forward. When they emerged, they were hovering above a derelict moon, cracked, hollowed, mined and abandoned by some long-forgotten race. Dominion signal traffic blipped faintly on the outer edge of the scanner. Dane angled toward it, and before Riven could protest, he cut the power and let them drift in cold silence. It was an old trick from the war. No thruster signature. No radar ping. Just a ghost passing through their perimeter. They floated above the cratered surface until a structure revealed itself. Deep underground, its outline faint against the shifting mineral deposits. But it was there. A Dominion lab. Cloaked. Still humming. Dane zoomed in. There, he said. That's where they're building the others. Riven growled low in his throat. No armies. No support, Dane said. We hit them hard and fast. Same way they hit Earth. Riven's gaze burned. Then we make sure none of them walk out. Dane reactivated systems and guided the scout ship into a crash vector. No elegant landings. No stealth now. Just fire. They hit atmosphere like a meteor. The alarm screamed. Hull integrity failed in 3 sectors. Metal screamed. Riven braced himself, digging claws into the floor. Dane gritted his teeth and held course. The ship hit the outer dome like a battering ram. It split the structure open. Debris rained across the internal compound. Scientists scattered. Mechs activated. Sirens blared. Dane and Riven stepped from the wreckage into a storm of fire and smoke. Riven leapt first. His claws dug into walls. He scaled a corridor in seconds, mauling a technician who reached for the alarm console. Blood sprayed. Armor cracked. Dane followed in his wake, firing at anything that moved. They reached the core of the lab, a cloning chamber lined with nutrient tanks that glowed faint blue. Inside floated forms. Dozens. Hundreds. All apex. All incomplete. All dreaming of violence. Dane hesitated. Riven did not. He ripped out the main energy line with his teeth. The tanks collapsed. Fluid poured across the floor like melting ice. The clones spasmed and convulsed, their neural systems shattering without containment. Some roared. Others gurgled. Then silence. Dane stared at the carnage. That's hundreds of them. Years of work. And none of them ever bonded, Riven said. The ground shook. Behind them, a hatch exploded open. From the smoke stepped something worse than Crawl. Taller, smarter, fully grown, and fully conscious. It stood like a nightmare-made flesh, apex body, but armored with Dominion exotech. Its face was blank. Its eyes were black. No emotion. No bond. Just programming. The prototype screamed and charged. Riven and Dane split apart. The beast was faster than any they'd faced. It moved like lightning, leapt 10 meters in a second, landed beside Dane and swung. He ducked. Barely. The wall behind him exploded. Riven crashed into it mid-sprint, shoulder first. The two rolled across the floor in a blur of blood and steel. The clone roared again. It didn't think. It didn't hesitate. It just killed. Dane picked up a loose plasma torch, activated it, and flung it toward the storage racks. The canisters ignited. Fire swept the room. The clone turned its head just for a breath. Riven struck. Jaws locked onto its throat. Claws pierced its spine. They rolled into the fire. Dane screamed, "Riven?" No answer. The clone fought like it didn't feel pain. It thrashed, spun, broke metal pipes and tore through walls trying to shake him off. Riven held. Dane fired every last round into its legs. The beast buckled. Riven's claws found the soft joint in its skull. One final twist. The clone went limp. Riven collapsed beside it, smoke rising from his fur, his chest heaving. Dane ran to him, slid to his knees. "You good?" "Never better. We need to go." "No." "What?" Riven looked up at him, blood smeared across his face. "This place needs to burn." Dane looked back at the core. The flames hadn't spread far enough. The main servers were still intact. Backup systems would restore the lab in weeks. He pulled a detonator from his belt. One he hadn't used since the prison break. He tossed it to Riven. The apex caught it. Arched an eyebrow. "You sure? You still owe me from Soren Belt." Riven nodded. Dane moved fast, climbing out the back of the lab through a shattered vent chute. As he scrambled up toward the surface, he looked down one last time. Riven stood alone among the wreckage, claws glowing, detonator in hand. Their eyes met through the smoke. No words. Just memory. Dane broke the surface. The air was thin and poisonous, but he could breathe it long enough. A Dominion cargo vessel sat untouched at the outer pad. He boarded. As the engines roared, the moon behind him glowed. Then it erupted. A starburst of fire consumed the mountain. The lab. The clones. Everything. The shockwave hit seconds later. Dane watched through the viewport, silent. Then a voice came over the comms. "Next time," Riven said, breathing hard, "we steal the ship before we explode the planet." Dane blinked. "You survived." "Of course." "Where are you?" A clawed hand knocked on the hull behind him. Dane turned, laughing. Riven limped in, smoke still rising from his back. "You didn't think I'd miss the next war, did you?" Dane shook his head. "Let's go find out what else they've been hiding. Let's make them regret it." And together they vanished into the stars. Ready for the next war. They landed on the edge of a dying star system, guided only by flickers of Dominion data they'd intercepted days before. A single station floated in the silence, cloaked, wounded, and leaking radiation, barely alive. A black site hidden from galactic records. The last seed of the cloning project. Dane knew it before they docked. He felt it like a sickness in his bones. This was where the last of them waited. Riven said nothing as they stepped from the ship. His breath was labored now, his wounds long past mending. His fur was thinner, his movements slower. Whatever Crawl had done to him in that lab, it had damaged something deeper than flesh. He never complained. The interior of the station was quiet, half-lit, barely powered. Rust clung to walls that hadn't seen maintenance in years. They moved like ghosts through abandoned corridors. No soldiers. No guards. Only silence, like the place had forgotten its purpose and was waiting to die. Then they found the chamber. Rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each one housing an apex, grown, armored, dreaming behind glass. Their faces were distorted reflections of Riven's. Some sleek, some monstrous, all dead-eyed and waiting for command. Dane stopped walking. His voice caught in his throat. "They copied you. All of you." Riven stepped forward and touched one of the pods. His claws left streaks in the condensation. Inside, the beast stirred, sensing its mirror. "They made them better. Stronger. Meaner. But they'll never be you." Riven's eyes glistened under the low blue light. They were never supposed to be. A door slid open behind them. A single figure entered. Human. His hair was white, skin blotched with implants and scars. A former scientist. A traitor. One of Earth's own who traded everything to survive. You made it farther than expected, he said. Though not far enough. Dane raised his weapon. The man didn't flinch. They're not just clones, the scientist said. They're vessels. For you. For him. For what you were. And when you're dead, they'll become all you couldn't be. Riven growled. The sound was low, mournful. Dane stepped forward, voice shaking. You tortured me. For years. You broke Earth. Burned our cities. And now you wear our skin like you earned it? I improved it. You desecrated it. The man smiled. You can't stop what's already been born. Dane lowered the weapon. Raised a detonator instead. The scientist froze. You wouldn't. Riven's voice was soft. He would. The scientist stepped back. You'll kill them all. Even the ones not yet awake. They're not awake, Dane said. They're echoes. And it ends now. He pressed the trigger. Nothing happened. A dead switch. Interference. The scientist laughed. Did you really think I'd let you walk in here with a working failsafe? From behind the stasis pods, shadows emerged. 1, 2, 3. Fully grown. Awake. Hungry. They moved like Riven, but not quite. Faster. Smoother. Soulless. Dane lifted his rifle and fired. Riven leapt forward. He tackled the first. Tore its throat before it could hiss. The second slammed him into the wall. Bones cracked. Riven roared and rolled, flipping it over, eviscerating it mid-air. The third pounced on Dane. He fired into its chest, but it didn't stop. Then Riven was there, tearing it off, taking the blow meant for Dane. The claws raked across his ribs. He didn't scream. He collapsed. The clones fell still. Dane fired one more shot. The scientist fell. The last betrayal gone. He ran to Riven, hands shaking. Blood soaked the floor. Hot. Real. Final. Riven was fading. No, Dane whispered, pressing against the wounds. Don't. You promised. I did. Riven's voice was quiet, almost childish. But I'm tired. Dane looked around the room. Flames licked the edges of the consoles. A coolant pipe hissed nearby. The station's core was unstable. It wouldn't take much. Get up, he begged. We have more to do. There's still more to burn. There always is. Then don't leave me. Riven's eyes blinked slowly. I was born for you. And I lived for you. But I was never meant to outlive you. Dane's breath hitched. He had buried friends before. Squad mates. Commanders. Family. But this felt like cutting out his own heart. You're not allowed to die first, Dane said. You're the one who always comes back. Riven's claws brushed against his arm. I did. When it mattered. The station shook again. The lights dimmed. Emergency sirens failed to wail. There was only the sound of dying machines. Dane pressed his forehead to Riven's. Stay with me. Riven didn't answer. His chest stopped rising. His eyes went still. Dane didn't move for a long time. The flames drew closer, heat curling the edges of his clothes. The detonator blinked again. Maybe the interference had passed. Maybe not. He rose slowly, picked up the device and looked back at the clone pods. Hundreds of them. All waiting. Not for orders. Not for war. Just to erase what he and Riven had once been. He limped to the main core, tore open the coolant regulator, exposed the fusion artery. The room flooded with light. He placed the detonator at the base. Then he turned one last time and looked at Riven's body, still curled like he was dreaming of forests long gone. Wait for me, Dane whispered. I won't be long. He pressed the trigger. This time it worked. The station vanished in silence, a bloom of fire and light lost in the empty dark between stars. And in that moment, for the first time in years, there were no experiments, no war, no torment, only peace. Man and beast. Bound forever. Gone together. Unbroken.